Hello lads, sorry for the delay in the video. The visualizer was giving me a bit of trouble. We had to get a lead to get it working, okay? So it should have been done yesterday. But we have it going today, okay? So that's a good start, I suppose, okay? So what we're going to try and do, guys, is we're going to try and cover the topic of conversion timber. I'm just going to have a quick run through why we do it, how we do it, when we do it. There's 3 different types of conversion. We go through those, and then there's just a little bit at the end. Okay, so hopefully the video won't take too long. Okay, but there is a nice little bit of stuff that we have to get through. Okay, so the first thing anyway, guys, is the conversion of timber. Okay, so what is it? What does it mean? All right, so similar to the conversion of anything, guys. All right, so I'm just going to do a little bit of right and left here and a few sketches on the right. So similar to conversion of anything, it's basically when you're changing it from one thing to another. Okay, so when we talk about the conversion of timber, it's very similar to if you were converting euros into dollars or sterling. All you're doing is changing the state. Okay, so what we're doing with conversion of timber is we're bringing the timber from a log, okay, or from a grown tree, and we're converting it into planks of wood. Okay, so obviously the reason for that is so that we can convert it into something that we can use. Okay, we can't use logs of timber. Okay, we can work with planks of wood. It's a lot easier. It's a lot easier to make furniture, to make construction, like roofs out of it. And also, guys, the next topic we're going to be looking at is going to be seasoning. We need to be able to dry the timber down to a moisture content which is around 20%. Okay, so you can imagine if you had a big log, it would be very difficult to dry it out. Whereas when we chop it up into planks, it becomes a lot easier to dry out. All right, so that's what conversion is taking a log and it's making the log into planks. Okay. What's the best time to do it? Okay, so that's the next question. Okay, so the best time to convert timber, guys. Okay, so take timber and turn it into a plank of wood is in the winter time. Okay, so if you think of the 2 seasons when it comes to wood, guys, is winter and summer. All right, there's a lot of growth in one and there's very little growth in the other. Okay, so obviously there's going to be a lot more growth in the summer and there's going to be a lot less growth in the winter. Okay, so the winter months are the best time to convert timber. Okay, so we want timber to see as many summers as we possibly can because the greatest amount of growth takes place then. And because of that, okay, the winter months are the very busy months for harvesting timber. Okay. Okay, so look, that's just a very small little bit about it. All right, so that's what it is, and it's the best time to do it, and it's also why we do it. Okay, so the next thing that we're going to look at, guys, is the 3 different types of conversion. Okay, so we see 3. I say 3, but there's actually 4. But one is there's 2 very similar, so we kind of refer to as one type of conversion. Okay, so previously, guys, the conversion would have been done using chainsaws and kind of more manual labor. Now it's all machinery. Okay, so I've shown you videos of large machines going to forest trees, kind of like a track machine. They chop the tree at the bottom, and it's all done using a large machine, and it's drawn to a sawmill using trucks. Okay, so once it gets to the sawmill, there are 3 different types of conversions, right? So I'm just going to sketch out the 3 types of conversion. Okay, I'll divide the page into 3 to begin with, maybe. Okay. Okay, so I'm just drawing a cross section here, guys, of 3 logs. Okay, just very lightly, all I'm doing here is sticking the grain into the center of the logs. Okay, so if you don't have a compass at home, guys, don't worry about it. Just do this freehand. If you do have a compass, do it with a compass because it looks a little bit better. Okay, it looks tighter and neater. Okay, so I'm just after drawing in the annual growth rings, guys. So obviously the annual growth rings is the build-up of growth from 1 year's growth in the tree. Okay, so that's the summer months and the winter months. Okay, so the summer months, the greatest amount of growth takes place. That's the lighter colored wood within the middle of the rings. In the winter months, very little growth takes place, and that's the darker colored wood. Okay. Yeah, so I'll just finish these off. So guys, pause and play this video as you need. Okay, so you're looking to end up with a sheet which will be very similar to the one that I'm creating. Yours might be better because you may be better sketching, but the information, guys, is the important thing. Okay, so you get all the information in this sheet. So we have 3 different logs here, and we're going to have a look at 3 different ways to convert these logs into planks. Okay, so the first one that we're going to look at, guys, is called through and through sawing. Okay. Okay, so if I was to give you a little bit of timber, guys, something similar to this, and if I asked you to convert that into planks, this is more than likely the method which the majority of you would choose. Okay, so with the method of through and through, all you're doing is you're pushing the log of the tree through a large saw, be it a bandsaw or whatever kind of saw you want, and you're just cutting it straight across the center, and you're putting planks out of it all in the one direction. Okay, so I've just run over that in the pin. So through and through sawing, guys, it goes through the saw, straight through, creating a number of planks ranging from narrow planks to wide planks in the center of the log and back to narrow planks again. Okay, so this is definitely the most straightforward method of doing it. Because it's the most straightforward and because you're not turning the log in any direction, it's going to be the quickest way of doing it. And because it's the quickest way, it's going to be the cheapest way. Okay, so just on the right hand side over here, I'm just going to create a little table and we're going to put in some advantages and we're going to put in some disadvantages, okay, as we speak about these. Okay, so obviously we say that this is really fast. Okay, if it's really fast, that means it's cheap. Okay, so it's the cheapest way of converting timber. Okay, there's very little waste, guys, so you can see that there's very little waste around the outside here. And they are the 3 advantages. Okay, you're going to get a variety of boards as well, guys. You can see that you're going to get a narrow one here, but when we come into the center, you're going to get a really nice wide board, which is obviously the wider the board, the more expensive they are to buy. So you're going to create a little bit of money off of these ones here. The disadvantages, guys, we're going to come back to this. Okay, so we're going to talk about the disadvantages for the moment, or sorry, the advantages for the moment, and okay, the disadvantages we'll come back to because I want to explain a few of the other methods first. Okay, so through and through is the first method. The second method we're going to look at, we're going to split it into 2 different types. Okay, so this is the one I was on about where they're very similar. So we split them into 2 different types, but we'll just do it with one sketch. Okay, so I'm just dividing that log in half. Okay, on the right, I'm going to put radials on. And on the left, I'm going to put quarters on. Okay, so quarter sawing to begin with, guys, the one on the left, that's very much as the name suggests. Okay, so we have this log halved already. So similar to if you were to get an apple pie and cut it into quarters, the next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to bring a line straight across here to the left, and all of a sudden I have 2 quarters. So you can imagine if we're doing this in one large chunk, you carry that line straight across here, and I will carry it straight across because the radial saw is very similar. We now have 4 quarters, okay? Once you have the quarters with the quarter sign, we're trying to get the largest planks out first, okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this plank out first because that's going to be the widest plank, okay? Again, these are more valuable. The larger the plank, the more valuable they are, okay? And from here, guys, I don't want to stay going across. I want to get the next largest plank going in this way, okay? So you can see this is the first plank. The second plank is going here. And I'm just going to mirror that up here, okay? And we're going to continue doing the same thing, guys. All right, this is the next widest plank I can get. And again, this is the next widest plank I can get here. And we're going to come in here once again, come in from the outside, and we're just going to repeat that process, okay? And you can see that you're going to be left a little bit of waste here. That's not going to be any good to us, okay? So that will be going to the bark machine, or it's the mulched up. It won't be discarded, it will be used, but it has no great value. So you can see there's a little bit of waste here, or if you didn't want to put a little bit of waste in there, you could make a very small tank out of it, but again, the value of those is not great, okay? So this is quarter sawing, guys. But the really large advantage of quarter sawing is that the grain is coming through it at roughly 90 degrees most of the time. So you can see the grain here is cutting across this. So if I can zoom in here for a sec. Okay, so you can see with the most of these planks, guys, that the grain is coming across the plank perpendicular to the plank. Okay, so perpendicular to this line. Okay, so the grain is nearly at 90 degrees in most cases. Okay, so if we just take a plank here, we can see that the grain is nearly at 90 degrees in most cases going across the plank. Okay, and that's a massive advantage. All right, so that's going to reduce cupping. Okay, so if we zoom back out here a sec. If we just have a look at this here, guys, all right. So what this is, lads, is an example of cupping. Okay, so this is the greatest defect, or it's the greatest hindrance when we come to sawing up timber and converting timber. Okay, so the way that we saw up the timber, when we dry it, it reacts in different ways. Okay, so cupping, gents, is an example of the biggest disadvantage from true and true sawing. Okay, so when we do true and true sawing, the grain is not at 90 degrees to the side of the timber, as I just shown you in quarter sawing. Okay, so you can see here that the grain is kind of in a semicircular shape going through the middle of that plank. Okay, so the reason that this cups when it dries out is that when we spoke about the annual growth rings, guys, there's a large number of cells in here, okay? So the cells is what provides the growth. When this starts to dry out, the cells start to shrink, okay? So you go from having a straight plank to all of a sudden there's a lot of shrinkage in it, okay? And when it shrinks, it's going to try and get smaller, okay? So it's trying to reduce in size. And because the annual growth rings, guys, are going in a semicircular direction through it, as these are shrinking, the 2 wings here are looking to pull down. And for this opposite one here, you can see that the annual growth rings go in the opposite direction. So these are cupping up, okay? So this is the biggest disadvantage, guys, of true and true sawing. And at the end of the lesson, or at the end of the video, we'll just have another look at cupping and why it happens. Okay, we'll do a few sketches on it. We'll try and explain a little bit better. Okay, so if we come back up here, guys, to true and true sawing, all right, the biggest disadvantage to true and true sawing is cupping. Okay, so you can imagine if you were creating furniture or flooring, you would not want a board which was cut using true and true sawing. Okay, you wouldn't want that in your house because it's going to cup and it's going to cause you problems on the road. Okay, so that's the biggest disadvantage. Only for that, guys, true and true sawing is the cheapest, it's the fastest, it gives you the largest board, it will be perfect. Okay, but because the board's cup, well, then we have an issue with it straight away. All right. So I just want to put in one more little where we'd use it here, okay? So if this happens, why would we use it, or where would we use it? Okay, if this happens, like why is there a place for true and true sawing? All right, so we use true and true sawing, guys, in areas where if there's a little bit of a cup, okay, not a massive cup like I just shown you, but if there is a little bit of a cup, it's not going to affect us too much, okay? So construction, guys, is an area where if there's a little bit of deformation in the timber, if there's a little cup, it's not going to reduce the strength. Okay, you're not going to see it in a lot of cases. So if you think that if there's timber stud walls in your house, if there's a roof in your house, you're not going to see that. Okay, so if it cuts a little bit, it's not going to matter. Okay, so we use it in the construction because the cost is low. All right, so if we have a low cost, that's a massive advantage for construction because we want to keep the cost of the house down. So that's the main place where we use true and true sawing, guys. Again, it can be used in loads of other places as well, but that's probably the big one, okay? Because it is so cheap, convert timber that way, we'll use it in construction, okay? So if we just come back to quarter sawing, quarter and radial sawing, guys, have very similar advantages and disadvantages. Okay, so we'll make them into the same table. Okay, so advantages and disadvantages. Okay, so the advantage straight away is that the wood is stable. There's going to be no cupping. Okay, all right. That's really the main advantage. It has an attractive grain pattern. Okay, so if you can imagine the grain pattern going down through this, it will be kind of like the grain in a hurley, as in it's going to be running. If I do a little sketch here, if this was the length of the hurley, the grain is going to be running fairly parallel all the way. Okay, so you're going to have a nice attractive grain patterning, especially for furniture. That's important. Okay, so a good grain patterning. And the last thing, guys, is that the boards are going to wear evenly. Okay, so just to explain that last one, if we were to look at a board, a cross section of a board here, which was going to be used as a flooring board, okay? If you have grain, which is at 90 degrees, like it is here in this method of conversion, to the side, so the grain is kind of at 90 degrees to the top of this here, you can imagine that the darker one, or the darker rays of timber, so the winter growth, is going to be a little bit harder. It's going to be harder. The wood in it is going to be harder than the summer growth here, which is a little bit softer. Okay. And why is that an issue with something like flooring? Well, the reason is if you had a lot of traffic over that floor over a number of years, give it 5-10 years, there's going to be a little bit of wear in the floor. Okay. And you can imagine if you had a lot of this softwood, there will be a lot of wear in that floor. Whereas with this year, every 5 to 10 millimeters, you're going to have a ray of winter growth, which is a lot harder. So it's going to reduce the wear in your floor. Okay, so if we just compare this over to, I'll do it true and true sawing cross section here. Okay, so as we were looking at it, what I'm going to draw here now is similar to the grain in this one here. Okay, so you can see that the winter wood is kind of going like this. Something like that in here. Okay, and this is going to be a lot harder. So these rings are not going to wear as fast, or they're not going to wear as fast, yes, as the softer, lighter colored wood inside here. Okay, so what that means is after 5 to 10 years, you might have wear in your plank, but it's not going to wear evenly. So this is going to wear nice and consistently. In the quarter sawn down here, you're going to have a lot of wear in this area here because this is really soft. Okay, you're going to have a little ridge then because you've hard winter growth timber here. And then once again, you're going to have a little bit of wear in here because that's softwood once again. It's not as hard as the winter growth. And then once again, you're going to have a little bit of wear in here. Okay, so what you're going to end up with is, if I just sketch it up here, or even, yeah, here we do, you're going to end up with a little bit of ridges in your wood after 5 to 10 years with the wear. Okay, so it's not going to remain flat. You're going to have little ridges inside it. All right, so we don't want that. So that's a very big advantage, guys, for quarter sawn. So if you're thinking of anything that's going to be something like flooring, furniture, kitchen tables, you want it to wear nice and evenly. You don't want hollows and holes inside it. So that's a big advantage for quarter sawing. Okay. The disadvantage for quarter sawing here, guys, if we have to saw it in this direction, you can imagine if you had a plank or the trunk of a tree, if this was it here, every time you saw down through it, you have to turn it, saw it again, turn it around, turn it around. So every saw cut you're doing, you're turning the log after you that saw cut to create your next saw cut. Okay, so obviously that's going to be very slow. And as we were discussing, guys, with the true and true sawing, if it's fast, it's cheap. The opposite is true here. If it's slow, it's going to be expensive. Okay. So it's going to take machinery more time to do it. All right. Just with the radial sawing, guys, we'll just have a quick look at this. It's very similar. The radial sawing, we create our first two planks out of it. Okay, so we get our two longest planks. Okay, once again here we get our two longest planks. But from here, guys, we come at 45 degrees from the corner. Okay, so this is roughly 45 degrees. And we just cut our planks up from there. Okay, so again, the large advantage of this, guys, is that the grain is at 90 degrees to every one of these planks. Okay, so with the quarter sawn, it's fairly good. With the radial sawn, it's even better again. Okay, so we just zoom in this here for a sec. With the quarter sawn, we were talking about the grain pattern, but you can see that with the quarter, you might have a little bit of an angle with some of the grain, just a really small bit of an angle. But with the radial sawn, the grain is more than likely going to be at roughly 90 degrees all the time. Okay, so if we just take a few planks here, you can see that the grain is going at a really good angle at 90 degrees to the plank, okay, which is the big advantage that we're looking for. So radial and quarter sawing, guys, are both very good in that regard. Okay, so they both give you planks which are stable, they both give you planks which have good grain patterns, and they wear evenly, okay? So when we think back to the flooring, that's a big advantage, all right? So this will be used, guys, in flooring a lot of the time because it wears evenly, and also furniture making or anything which requires stable wood. Okay, wood is that's not going to cook, not going to plank. So I expect it's expensive furnitures, kitchen tables, just things like that. Okay. The last one that we're going to look at, guys, is called tangential sawing. So T-A-N-G. So, guys, tangential sawing is the method which is the least, I suppose, common or the least popular. Okay, so tangential sawing is kind of a mix between the two. Okay, so we're looking for nice wide boards. We're not too concerned about if the wood is a little bit unstable. Okay, so the wood is the most stable here. We're looking for this one is kind of between the top two here. Okay, so it's kind of in the middle. All right, so what we're going to do is you put it into the machine and it's just going to start sawing off 4 faces all the way around, guys. Okay, so if you can imagine this going into the machine, your machine would have 4 blades in it, so you'd have 4 bandsaws. Okay, so it would run through, and then the bandsaw would just come in a certain thickness, which would be the thickness that you want your planks at, and would cut the 4 parallel to the first 4 lines, and then it just works its way in. Okay, so from here, you have another plank here, another plank here, another plank here. Okay, and you can see, guys, that your planks in this area are the best planks because they're kind of have a good width to them. As we start to come in here, the planks are getting smaller and smaller, and as they're getting smaller and smaller, the cost of them is going to be going down. So for a sawmill, the cost or the money they're going to get for the inside layer of planks here is not going to be as much for the outside ones. Okay, so just thinking back to the earlier ones, guys, and the importance of the grain direction and where the grain is going with these. You can see if we zoom in here, the grain is not great in these ones, okay? As in, it's not going to be a very stable wood. You can see that the grain is very like true and true sawing here. It's not as bad as true and true sawing, but it is similar, okay? So it's not as bad, but it is similar, all right? So if we look at disadvantages and advantages for this, okay, so the first advantage, guys, is that if we do this method of sawing, we're going to create a, if I just do something in 3D over here, we're going to create a board which is a really attractive grain pattern. Okay, so this is the main advantage for this. So if you think of furniture like this, if you're looking for an attractive grain pattern, this is going to be your board. Okay, so it's going to be kind of I don't know what this is, something like this. So it's kind of a flame. They call it a flame grain pattern on it. Okay, so it's going to it does look well, and it does look very attractive if you make furniture out of wood which is converted in this way. Okay, so that is the main advantage. Okay, so it has a very attractive grain. The board season more quickly, so they dry out quickly. So we need it to be dry to use it, so it's a little bit faster when we cut it in this way. And also the last thing, guys, is especially for if you were using this kind of wood of construction, splitting is when you drive a nail through the end of a piece of timber and the end of the timber cracks. Okay, that's very common in dry timber. But if we were to carry a nail through this here, there's much less risk of a piece of timber cracking because the grain patterning is so unique. As in, there's not a lot of grain here. So if you look at something like true and true sawing here, you can see that there's massive amount of grain right alongside each other, whereas with tangential sawing, there's not going to be a lot of grain in the end of the plank. So when we drive our nail through here, there's much less of a chance of a splitting. Okay, so less splitting is also an advantage. Okay, the disadvantages, guys, are obviously like we discussed. It could be prone to cupping. Okay, and that's a massive disadvantage. That's a really big disadvantage. I just put an asterisk on that because that's massive. The last thing, guys, I suppose, is if we think about the speed of cutting this one, okay, it's going to be more expensive than true and true sawing. It may not be as expensive as this, but every cut, guys, you're going to be turning the log, and it's going to be a little bit time consuming to do that. So if it's time consuming, that means it's going to be expensive. Okay. So gents, that's the three types of conversion, or they are the three types of conversion. Okay. The very last thing I want to show you is just in the old woodwork book, it had a few nice sketches of the theory behind cupping in boards, and this is especially true to true and true sawing. Okay, so if we, so they're focusing here, guys, on a plank which would have been taken out of a log, and this is the true and true sawing method. Okay, so this would have been just cut straight through. Okay, when we go to dry this, it's going to present us with some problems. Okay, and that's shown up here. Okay, so we kind of discussed it a little bit earlier, but this is just a graphic which gives you a better idea. So the cells here, guys, okay, they all contain a massive amount of moisture content when the tree is grown. When the tree is grown, guys, there's a moisture content of 50% plus. But when we cut it down, we need to reduce that moisture content down to about 20%. Okay, so if you think of a food or something like that, if you think of I don't know, an orange, okay, an orange is a massive percentage of moisture content. Moisture content, guys, is basically the amount of water in something, okay? So if you think of an orange, the amount of moisture content, we'll say it's at 80%. If you reduce that moisture content by 30%, you can imagine that the orange is going to dry out and it's going to shrivel up and it's going to become smaller, okay? So that's kind of what's happening here with the tree, and the tank of the tree, but on a little bit of a smaller scale, okay? So it's going to shrivel, it's going to shrink, and you can see the direction that it's going to shrink in with the red arrows here. Okay, so it's shrinking back up in the direction of the grain. Okay, so if that happens, the result will be this is the shrinkage going in the direction of the arrows that I'm drawing. Okay, so it's shrinking this way. The result is a cupped piece of timber. Okay, so this is true and true sine. If we now quickly look at the one here, which would have been done using quarter sine. So quarter sine, guys, just to remind you, is this one here, where the grain is always kind of at a 90-degree perpendicular angle to the edge of the wood. Okay, you can see that the shrinkage is common and uniform and the same throughout. Okay, so the shrinkage is coming down here and it's coming up here from the top and the bottom. So as this is shrinking, guys, if you can imagine, I don't know, a slice of bread or something, it's all shrinking nice and evenly and at the same rate, okay? So you're not going to end up with a board that's cut, okay? You're going to end up with a board which maybe was this width here, that's going to just shrink in nice and evenly, and it's going to dry out nice and evenly, and you're going to get a nice even board once that's dried out. Okay, so gents, that's kind of the first video look. All right, so everything that we discussed, if we talk about shrinkage, okay, so I'll just put that in here, highlight this. So this is cupping, and this is an even shrinkage. Okay, so everything that we've discussed, guys, is, or sorry, one last thing. So where we'd use this, just on the right, guys, this is where we'd use it. And this is used in furniture making mostly. Again, furniture making because it has really attractive grain. Okay, the grain pattern here looks very well in projects. But guys, this one sheet, this is all the key information on conversion. If you can sketch these out, sketch it out nice and neatly, guys. Use a compass to draw in the logs, the cross sections if you have it. But look, this if we can create 4 or 5 of these over the next couple of weeks, it's going to be a massive resource for you when you're revising for any exam. Okay, so all the information from this topic and chapter is down on one sheet, which can only be helpful for you. Okay, so try and get this done, guys, nice and neatly. Okay, and I'll have an assignment created in Teams, and you'll have to get this uploaded before Friday. Okay, so thanks very much, guys, and best of luck with getting this done.